The morning sun peeked through the threadbare curtains of Lily's small apartment, casting thin stripes of light across her tired face. She groaned and rolled over, her hand automatically reaching to silence the alarm clock before it could ring for the third time. It was barely 5:30 a.m., but she had already hit the snooze button twice. The temptation to stay wrapped in the warmth of her blankets was strong, but the stack of bills on her kitchen counter was stronger. With a deep sigh, Lily swung her legs over the edge of the bed and rubbed her eyes. The apartment was chilly. She kept the heat low to save money, and goosebumps rose on her arms as she padded to the bathroom. The mirror revealed dark circles under her eyes, a testament to the late night she'd spent practicing piano pieces at the community center after her evening shift at the diner. Another day, another dollar, she murmured to herself, a phrase her grandmother had often repeated. The thought of her grandmother brought a small smile to her face. It was she who had first placed Lily's tiny fingers on piano keys, who had scraped together enough money for lessons from the church pianist, who had believed that music could open doors. But those doors had remained firmly shut after her grandmother's passing. The partial music scholarship Lily had won to the state university covered only a fraction of the tuition, and even with student loans, the financial burden had become too heavy by her third year. Now at 26, her degree remained unfinished, her dreams of performing professionally fading with each passing month of serving coffee and burgers. The shower was quick, hot water was another luxury she rationed, and within 30 minutes, Lily was dressed in her uniform, black slacks, a white button-up shirt, and comfortable shoes that could withstand 12 hours of standing. She pulled her long, dark hair into a neat ponytail and applied just enough makeup to look presentable. The diner had strict appearance standards, especially for the servers who worked the VIP section. Before leaving, she paused at the upright piano that took up most of her living room wall. It was old and slightly out of tune, but it was her most prized possession, the one thing she had refused to sell, even during her tightest financial moments. Her fingers danced lightly over the keys without pressing them, a phantom practice she often did when time was short. Today there was no time for even a short piece. The early shift started at 6:30 a.m., and the bus was often late. The journey to work was familiar and monotonous. The city was just waking up, streets gradually filling with early commuters. Lily spent the ride studying sheet music on her phone, mentally practicing a particularly challenging Rachmaninoff piece she'd been working on for months. Music theory had always come naturally to her, a fact that had surprised her teachers. "You have the ear," her grandmother used to say. "Some people study their whole lives and never develop what you were born with." The Blue Plate Diner wasn't much to look at from the outside, a standard, somewhat worn establishment that had been serving the community for decades. But inside it was split into two distinct worlds, the main dining area with its vinyl booths and formica tables, and the VIP section in the back, with white tablecloths, private booths, and a separate entrance for the wealthy customers who preferred discretion with their overpriced omelets. "You're cutting it close," remarked Vicky, the hostess, as Lily rushed through the employee entrance at exactly 6:28 a.m. "Bus was late again," Lily replied, quickly stashing her bag in her locker and grabbing an apron. "Who's on the floor with me today?" "Just you and Raoul for now." Tina called in sick again. Vicky rolled her eyes. "And you've got VIP breakfast at 7, some business meeting?" "They requested you specifically." Lily paused in tying her apron. "Requested me? Who?" "That real estate guy. The one with the funny hair who tips well but treats everyone like they're beneath him." "What's his name?" "Howard Reynolds," Lily supplied, her mood instantly darkening. Reynolds was notorious among the staff, obscenely wealthy from developing luxury properties, always demanding, and took pleasure in testing servers with impossible requests and arbitrary complaints. "That's the one." Vicky nodded. "He called yesterday and asked for the tall girl with the good memory. Guess your party trick of remembering everyone's order without writing it down impressed him." "Lucky me," Lily muttered, heading to the coffee station to start her prep work. The first hour passed quickly with the usual morning rush. Lily moved efficiently between tables, pouring coffee, taking orders, and delivering plates of steaming food. She had learned long ago that the secret to good tips was a combination of efficiency, friendliness, and knowing when customers wanted conversation and when they preferred to be left alone. At precisely 7 a.m., A sleek black car pulled up to the VIP entrance. Reynolds emerged first, his tailored suit probably worth more than Lily made in 3 months. He was followed by 4 men and 2 women, all similarly dressed in expensive business attire, all wearing expressions that suggested the early hour was a personal affront. Lily put on her professional smile and greeted them at the door. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. Your table is ready." Reynolds barely acknowledged her with a nod as he strode past, leading his entourage to the large corner booth. Lily followed, distributing menus and reciting the morning specials with practiced ease. "Coffee for everyone," Reynolds ordered without consulting the others. "And make sure it's hot. Last time it was barely lukewarm." "Of course, sir," Lily replied, maintaining her smile despite the unfair criticism. The coffee at the blue plate was always served at the perfect temperature. Reynolds just liked to complain. As she served the coffee moments later, she noticed the group had spread documents across the table, speaking in hushed tones about property values and investment opportunities. One name kept coming up: Westview Community Center. Lily nearly dropped the coffee pot. The Westview Community Center was where she practiced piano in the evenings, the only place in the neighborhood with a decent instrument available for public use. It was a vital resource for the community, offering after-school programs, senior activities, and arts education for those who couldn't afford private lessons. "So it's settled then," Reynolds was saying. "We'll announce the purchase next week and begin demolition within the month. The luxury condos will be marketed as Riverside Exclusive Living. We'll price them starting at $1.2 million. "What about the community pushback?" asked one of the women, glancing at a report. "There's already a petition with over 2,000 signatures to save the center." Reynolds waved his hand dismissively. "Poor people always complain when progress comes to their neighborhoods. They'll forget all about it once the property values start rising. Besides, the deal is done. I finalized the purchase yesterday." Lily stood frozen, coffee pot in hand, trying to process what she'd just heard. The center where local kids learned to play instruments, where seniors gathered for companionship, where she herself found solace at the keys of a grand piano. All of it would be bulldozed for luxury condos none of them could afford. "Is there a problem?" Reynolds looked up at her, eyebrows raised. "Or do you make a habit of eavesdropping on private conversations?" Heat rushed to Lily's face. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just waiting to take your order when you're ready." "We're ready now," he said curtly, and began rattling off a complex breakfast. "Order with specific modifications for each dish." Lily didn't need to write anything down. Her memory was indeed exceptional. But her mind was reeling as she headed to the kitchen. The community center had been her lifeline, her connection to music when everything else had been taken away. The thought of losing it felt like losing her grandmother all over again. Throughout the meal, Lily maintained her professional demeanor, but her heart wasn't in it. She served their food perfectly, refilled coffee cups before they were empty, and anticipated their needs before they had to ask. Yet her mind kept returning to the grand piano in the center's music room, to the children who took free lessons there, to the elderly woman who came to listen to Lily practice because it reminded her of her youth. As the business breakfast wound down, Reynolds requested the check. When Lily brought it, he pulled out a credit card without even glancing at the total. "I'm hosting a gathering at my home this weekend," he said as she processed the payment. "A charity event. Very exclusive." "That sounds lovely, sir," Lily responded automatically. "We're short-staffed. My usual catering company is handling another event." He looked her up and down appraisingly. "You seem competent enough. Interested in making some extra money? It pays well, $300 for the night, $300. Lily's mind immediately calculated what that could mean. Almost half her monthly rent, or the overdue electric bill plus groceries for 2 weeks, or the repair her piano desperately needed. "What would I need to do?" she asked cautiously. "Simple service work. Passing hors d'oeuvre, pouring champagne, clearing plates. Nothing you don't already do here." He handed her a business card. "Call this number if you're interested. Ask for my assistant, Diane. She'll give you the details." Lily took the card, her fingers slightly trembling. The irony wasn't lost on her, taking money from the man who was destroying something precious to her and many others. But $300 wasn't an opportunity she could easily dismiss. "Thank you for the offer. I'll consider it," she said. Reynolds nodded and stood, gathering his things. As the group prepared to leave, he paused and looked back at her. "You know, you're wasted here," he said, surprising her. "Someone with your memory and attention to detail could do better than serving eggs to business people." For a brief moment, Lily thought she detected something almost like kindness in his expression, but it vanished quickly, replaced by his usual impassive business face. "See that Diane gets an answer by tomorrow. She needs time to find a replacement if you decline." With that, he was gone, leaving Lily standing alone in the VIP section, his business card in her hand, and conflict in her heart. She slipped the card into her pocket and began clearing the table, her mind racing with possibilities and consequences. Later that evening, after her shift ended, Lily found herself standing outside the Westview Community Center, staring at the modest brick building that had become her sanctuary. Through the windows, she could see children in the art room, seniors gathered for a book club, teenagers playing basketball in the small gym. She pulled out Reynolds' business card and looked at it again. $300 for one night's work, from the man who was going to destroy all this. With a deep breath, she took out her phone and dialed the number, still uncertain what her decision would be when someone answered. All she knew was that her life was about to change. She just couldn't tell yet if it would be for better or worse. 3 rings, then a click. Howard Reynolds' office, Diane speaking. Lily took a deep breath, watching a group of children file out of their music lesson through the community center's front doors. Their faces were bright with accomplishment. Instrument cases clutched proudly in small hands. "Hello? This is Lily Chen. Mr. Reynolds offered me server work at his event this weekend." "Ah. Yes." Diane's voice was crisp and efficient. "He mentioned you. The event is Saturday evening, 6 to midnight. You'll need to arrive at 4 for setup and stay until 1 for cleanup. Black pants, white button-down shirt, comfortable black shoes. Hair must be pulled back. No excessive jewelry or perfume." The instructions came rapid fire, leaving no room for questions. Lily scrambled to make mental notes. The address is 47 Lakeview Heights. Take a photo ID for security. You'll be paid in cash at the end of the night. Any questions? Lily hesitated, then asked, "What kind of event is it exactly?" "A charity gala. Very high-profile guests. The cause is arts education for underprivileged youth." Diane's tone held a hint of irony that wasn't lost on Lily. Arts education, while destroying a community center that provided exactly that. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "I'll be there," Lily said finally. The decision felt like a betrayal, but the practical side of her knew this wasn't the time for pride. She needed that money. "Good, I'll put you on the list." Diane hung up without saying goodbye. Lily pocketed her phone and stared up at the community center building. A faded banner hung across the entrance, celebrating 25 years of community service. Soon it would be nothing but rubble. She felt a weight in her chest, like something precious was already lost. The next 2 days passed in a blur of double shifts at the diner. Lily had taken extra hours to make up for the Saturday night she'd be missing. By the time she collapsed into bed Friday night, every muscle ached with fatigue. Still, before sleep claimed her, she spent an hour at her piano, fingers moving through complex passages, finding comfort in the familiar patterns. Saturday dawned clear and crisp. Lily spent the morning doing laundry and preparing her uniform for the evening. At 3 o'clock, she called a rideshare she couldn't really afford. Public transportation to Lakeview Heights was spotty at best, and settled into the back seat with nervous anticipation. "Big party up there tonight?" the driver asked, eyeing her outfit in the rearview mirror. "Something like that," Lily replied, looking out the window as the scenery gradually changed. Apartment buildings gave way to townhouses, then to manicured estates set back from the road. The farther they drove, the larger the properties became, until they were passing sprawling mansions hidden behind ornate gates and tall hedges. "Must be nice," the driver commented, slowing as they approached a massive iron gate. "This is it, 47 Lakeview Heights." Lily swallowed hard as she took in the property. The driveway alone was longer than her entire street. Perfectly trimmed topiary lined the approach to a house that looked more like a small hotel. Fountains bubbled on either side of the massive front steps, and floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the late afternoon sun. After showing her ID to the security guard at the gate, Lily was directed to a side entrance where a harried-looking woman with a clipboard waited. "Lily Chen?" The woman checked something off her list. "I'm Diane, follow me." Lily had pictured Diane differently, older, sterner. In reality, she was perhaps 30, dressed in an expensive-looking pantsuit, her hair pulled into a sleek bun. The service entrance opened into a gleaming industrial kitchen, where at least a dozen people in chef's whites bustled about. The aromas of sizzling meat and exotic spices filled the air. "This way." Diane led her through the kitchen to a small room where several other people in servers' uniforms were gathered. "Wait here for orientation. Bathroom's through there if you need it." Left alone with the other servers, Lily took a moment to compose herself. The others chatted quietly among themselves, obviously experienced with this type of work. Most seemed to know each other, leaving Lily feeling even more like an outsider. "First time?" A friendly voice broke into her thoughts. Lily turned to see a young man about her age with kind eyes and a ready smile. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. "Kind of. You look like I did at my first gig. Part deer in headlights, part calculating escape routes." He extended his hand. "I'm Trey. Lily." She shook his hand, grateful for the friendly face. "Reynolds is actually one of the better clients," Trey said, lowering his voice. "Demanding, but he pays well, and the food they serve us after is always amazing. Some of these rich folks treat servers like we're furniture." Before Lily could respond, a stern-looking man in a tailored suit entered the room. The chatter immediately ceased. "Good evening. I'm Gregory, Mr. Reynolds' house manager. Tonight's event is in support of the Reynolds Foundation for Young Artists. The guests are influential people in the arts community, business leaders and local celebrities. Your job is to be invisible but available. No initiating conversations, no opinions, no lingering. You serve, you smile, you move on." He went on to explain their stations and rotations, the proper way to hold serving trays and the protocol for handling intoxicated guests. "One final note," Gregory concluded. "Mr. Reynolds' home contains several valuable art pieces and antiques. You are being monitored at all times. Any suspicious behavior will result in immediate removal and possible legal action." His gaze swept the room. "Any questions?" The room remained silent. "Good. Follow me for a tour of the serving areas." The next hour was a whirlwind of information, as they were led through rooms more opulent than anything Lily had ever seen. The main ballroom where dinner would be served featured cathedral ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and a wall of windows overlooking a perfectly landscaped garden illuminated by thousands of tiny lights. A stage had been set up at one end where a string quartet was arranging their instruments. But what caught Lily's breath was the grand piano positioned near the stage. It was the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. A gleaming black Steinway concert grand that must have cost more than she would earn in a decade. "That's an original Steinway Model D," Gregory noted, following her gaze. "Worth over $200,000. Mr. Reynolds had it shipped from Germany for his collection. It's tuned monthly whether it's played or not." Lily couldn't take her eyes off it. The thought of such an exquisite instrument sitting unplayed seemed almost criminal to her. "You play?" Trey whispered as they moved on. Lily nodded slightly. "Used to, nothing like that though. My sister plays. She'd probably faint at the sight of that thing." Their tour concluded back in the staging area, where they were each assigned serving stations and duties. Lily was placed on champagne duty, responsible for ensuring guests' glasses remained full during the cocktail hour. As the first guests began to arrive, Lily fell into the familiar rhythm of service work. Despite the upscale setting, it wasn't so different from the diner. Anticipate needs, move efficiently, remain pleasant but unobtrusive. The only challenge was balancing the delicate champagne flutes on silver trays while navigating through crowds of people who seemed oblivious to her presence. Reynolds made his entrance an hour into the event. Surrounded by a group of particularly well-dressed guests, he moved through the crowd with practiced charm, shaking hands and accepting compliments on his home with false modesty. Lily made sure to keep her distance, focusing on other areas of the room. "That's the governor with him," Trey murmured as he passed by with a tray of canapes. "And the woman in red is that famous opera singer. I forget her name." Lily glanced over despite herself. The woman in the crimson gown stood out among the guests, her bearing regal, her silver hair swept up elegantly. Lily recognized her immediately. Veronica Winters, one of the most celebrated sopranos of her generation. Lily had once stood in line for 3 hours to get standing room tickets to hear her perform. As the evening progressed, Lily managed to avoid direct interaction with Reynolds. The cocktail hour gave way to a seated dinner, which she helped serve with increasing confidence. The food was exquisite, tiny works of art on bone china plates. During brief moments in the kitchen, she glimpsed the remains of dishes returned barely touched. Enough wasted food to feed her for a week. After dinner, guests migrated back to the ballroom for the entertainment portion of the evening. The string quartet played as attendees sipped after-dinner drinks and chatted in small groups. Lily continued her rounds with a tray of champagne, increasingly aware of how tired her feet were becoming. She was refreshing her tray when a commotion near the stage caught everyone's attention. Reynolds stood center stage with a microphone, slightly flushed from alcohol but still commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, your generous donations tonight have already exceeded our goal of $1 million for arts education." He paused for applause. "As a special treat, Madame Winters has graciously agreed to perform for us." More enthusiastic applause as the opera singer made her way to the stage. She whispered something to the quartet, who nodded and prepared their instruments. "But first," Reynolds continued, "I thought we might have some amateur entertainment." His eyes scanned the room and Lily felt a chill as his gaze landed on her. "You there, champagne girl?" Lily froze, tray in hand, as heads turned toward her. "Come up here a moment, would you?" For a terrible second, Lily considered refusing. But Gregory's warning glance from across the room made it clear that wasn't an option. Setting down her tray, she made her way reluctantly to the stage, intensely aware of hundreds of eyes following her movement. "I noticed you admiring my Steinway earlier," Reynolds said when she reached him, his voice amplified for all to hear. "Do you play?" The microphone was suddenly in front of her face. Lily swallowed hard. "A little," she managed, her voice barely audible. "A little," Reynolds repeated with exaggerated interest. "How charming." He turned to his guests with a theatrical gesture. "Before we enjoy the talents of a true artist, I thought it might be amusing to see what our server can do with this magnificent instrument. What do you say?" The crowd murmured with interest, some looking uncomfortable, others openly amused by the spectacle. Lily stood rigid with humiliation, understanding exactly what was happening. Reynolds was using her as entertainment, the working-class girl presuming to touch a master's instrument. It was cruel, deliberate, and she was powerless to refuse. With a grand gesture, Reynolds led her to the piano, pulling out the bench as if seating royalty, the mockery evident in every movement. "Please," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "show us this little something you can play." Lily sat down, her legs trembling so badly she wasn't sure they would support her. The ballroom had fallen silent, the weight of expectation and anticipated embarrassment hanging in the air. She stared at the gleaming keys, perfect ivory and ebony stretching before her like a path leading two directions, toward humiliation or toward something else entirely. The choice, she realized, was still hers to make. The world narrowed to just Lily and the piano. The weight of hundreds of eyes on her back faded away as she placed her hands on the cool ivory keys. This instrument was nothing like the worn upright in her apartment or even the decent baby grand at the community center. This was a masterpiece of engineering, of art, waiting to be awakened. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "When you play, don't think about the people listening. Play for yourself, for the music. Everything else will follow." Lily's fingers found their position without her needing to look. For a moment she sat perfectly still, gathering her courage. Then gently she pressed down. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major floated into the air, so pure and resonant that several guests audibly gasped. Lily kept her touch light, letting the melody breathe as it rose and fell like gentle waves. The piano responded to her slightest touch, revealing colors and textures she had never been able to coax from lesser instruments. After the opening phrases, she paused briefly, a silence filled with tension. Then, instead of continuing with the Nocturne, her hands shifted position. The opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 thundered through the ballroom, powerful and commanding. The collective intake of breath from the audience was palpable. This was no amateur fumbling through a simple tune. This was authority, mastery, passion. Lily's fingers flew across the keys with precision and confidence, building the dramatic introduction with perfect control of dynamics. Without an orchestra behind her, she still managed to suggest its presence, filling in harmonies and counter melodies where needed. As she played, something remarkable happened. For the first time in years, Lily felt truly free. All the frustration of abandoned dreams, of financial struggle, of daily indignities, all of it channeled through her fingertips into this magnificent instrument. She wasn't playing for Reynolds or his guests anymore. She was playing for herself, for her grandmother, for every person who had ever been underestimated or overlooked. In the back of the ballroom, Trey stood frozen, a tray of empty glasses forgotten in his hands. Gregory, the house manager, had stopped mid-sentence while instructing another server. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to listen, standing in doorways with expressions of wonder. Reynolds stood to the side of the stage, his face a complex mixture of emotions, surprise, confusion, and something that might have been shame. He had expected a halting rendition of Chopsticks or a simple folk tune, something his guests could chuckle politely at before the real entertainment began. This virtuoso performance had clearly blindsided him. Madame Winters, the opera singer who had been scheduled to perform next, moved closer to the piano, her practiced eye assessing Lily's technique with growing admiration. She noticed how the young woman's posture had transformed. The server's humble demeanor replaced by the confident bearing of a true musician when Lily transitioned seamlessly into Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most technically challenging pieces in the piano repertoire. A buzz of excited whispers swept through the crowd. The piece was a showstopper, a dazzling display of speed, precision, and artistry that few pianists could master. Lily's hands became a blur over the keys, executing the rapid, repeated notes and complex crossed-hand passages with apparent ease. A famous concert pianist in attendance leaned toward his companion and whispered, "Conservatory training. Has to be. Juilliard maybe, or Curtis." The piece built to its thrilling conclusion, Lily's hands dancing across the keyboard with increasing intensity until the final triumphant chord rang out. For a moment, complete silence filled the ballroom. Then the applause began. It started with a single person, Madame Winters herself, and quickly swelled to a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, some calling bravo. Others simply stood in stunned appreciation, hands clapping rapidly. Lily remained seated at the piano, slightly dazed, as if waking from a dream. The music had transported her so completely that she had forgotten where she was, why she was there. Reality came rushing back as the applause continued, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. Reynolds approached the piano, his expression unreadable. He reached for the microphone that had been set up nearby. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice slightly unsteady, "I believe we've just witnessed something extraordinary." He turned to Lily. "I think I speak for everyone when I ask, who are you, really?" The microphone was in front of her again, but this time the eyes watching her held respect, not anticipation of failure. Lily swallowed hard. "My name is Lily Chen," she said quietly. "I studied piano performance at State University before I had to drop out." She hesitated, then added, "I practice at Westview Community Center now, when I can." A flicker of recognition crossed Reynolds's face at the mention of Westview. "Well, Lily Chen," he said, recovering his composure, "you have certainly surprised us all tonight. Thank you for that unexpected performance." He gestured for her to leave the stage, clearly eager to regain control of his carefully planned event. And now, as promised, the incomparable Madame Veronica Winters. Applause followed Lily as she made her way off the stage, her legs still shaky from adrenaline. She intended to slip back to the kitchen, to resume her duties as if nothing had happened, but she couldn't move more than a few steps into the crowd before being stopped. "Extraordinary technique," said an older gentleman, pressing a business card into her hand. "Call my office. We should talk." "Where did you study before State?" asked a woman in an elegant blue gown. "Do you have an agent? Are you performing anywhere currently?" The questions came from all directions as guests surrounded her, many introducing themselves as directors of music programs, producers, patrons of the arts. Lily answered as best she could, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. From across the room, Gregory caught her eye and made a subtle gesture. She was still on duty. Excusing herself as politely as possible, Lily retreated to the kitchen, her heart pounding. She leaned against a wall, breathing deeply, trying to process what had just happened. That was incredible, Trey said, appearing beside her with a glass of water. Why didn't you say you could play like that? Lily accepted the water gratefully. Would you have believed me if I had? He laughed. Fair point. But seriously, you're like professional level. What are you doing serving champagne? Paying rent, Lily replied with a small smile. Same as you. Well, after tonight, I'm guessing you'll have options. Before she could respond, Diane appeared in the doorway. Her clipboard still in hand, but her usual efficiency somewhat diminished by evident surprise. Lily, Mr. Reynolds would like to see you in his study. Now. A ripple of whispers went through the kitchen staff. Being summoned to the host's private study during an event was unprecedented. Is something wrong? Lily asked, suddenly worried she had somehow violated protocol. Just come with me, Diane said, not unkindly. Lily followed her through a series of corridors to a part of the house they hadn't been shown during orientation. Reynolds's study was a large room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk of dark polished wood. Reynolds himself stood by a window, looking out at the garden, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. Thank you, Diane. That will be all, he said without turning around. Diane gave Lily an encouraging nod before slipping out and closing the door behind her. Reynolds took a sip from his glass, still looking out the window. Westview Community Center, he said finally. That's where you said you practice. Yes, sir. Lily stood uncomfortably just inside the door, unsure if she should approach further. Interesting coincidence. He turned to face her. Did you know I recently acquired that property? I overheard your breakfast meeting at the diner, Lily admitted. About the demolition plans. Ah. Reynolds studied her with new interest. So you knew who I was when you accepted this job? I needed the money, Lily said simply. Reynolds nodded slowly, seeming to appreciate her honesty. The center means something to you. It wasn't a question, but Lily answered anyway. It means something to a lot of people. Children learn music there who couldn't afford lessons otherwise. Seniors have a place to gather. Teenagers have somewhere safe to go after school. She paused, then added quietly, and yes, I practice piano there, on an instrument I could never afford to own, like the one you just played so masterfully in my ballroom. Reynolds set his glass down on a side table and crossed to his desk, leaning against it. Tell me something, Ms. Chen. How does someone with your obvious talent end up serving breakfast at a diner? The question held no mockery now, only genuine curiosity. Lily hesitated, then decided there was no point in holding back. My grandmother raised me. She sacrificed everything to pay for my lessons. When I got a partial scholarship to state, we thought everything would work out. But then she got sick my second year. The medical bills, she shook her head. After she died, I tried to keep going, working nights, taking fewer credits each semester. Eventually, it just wasn't possible anymore. Reynolds listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. So I left school, Lily continued. Kept the minimum payments on my student loans. Kept practicing when I could. That's my story. Not very unusual, really. On the contrary, Reynolds said, pushing himself off the desk to stand at his full height. I find it quite unusual to discover a world-class pianist serving champagne at my party. He smiled slightly. Particularly one who knew I was planning to bulldoze her practice space and took the job anyway. He walked to a cabinet, pulled out another glass, and poured a small amount of the amber liquid. Bourbon, he offered, extending the glass toward her. Lily shook her head. No, thank you. I'm still working. Of course. He set the second glass down untouched. Ms. Chen, I'd like to make you a proposition. Lily shifted uncomfortably under Reynolds's intense gaze. The word proposition hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities both promising and concerning. I'm listening, she said cautiously. Reynolds paced slowly in front of his desk, organizing his thoughts. I'm a businessman, Ms. Chen. I recognize talent and opportunity when I see them. He stopped and faced her directly. What happened out there tonight wasn't just a good performance. It was a moment. The kind of moment people remember, talk about, share with others. He gestured toward a wall of framed photographs Lily hadn't noticed before. They showed Reynolds with various celebrities, politicians, and business leaders, all carefully arranged to showcase his connections and influence. I've built my career on recognizing potential value. I look at you and see someone with extraordinary ability who has been overlooked by the system. He picked up his bourbon again. What would you say if I told you I could help you finish your education? Lily's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression neutral. I'd wonder what you would want in return. A smile flickered across Reynolds' face. Smart, direct, I like that. He took a sip from his glass. Here's my offer. I'll establish a music scholarship that will cover your remaining tuition plus living expenses so you can complete your degree. In return, I want you to be the face of my new charitable foundation. The one for arts education? Lily asked, remembering the gala's stated purpose. Precisely. The Reynolds Foundation for Young Artists. He set his glass down and leaned forward slightly. Tonight was supposed to be our formal launch. I'd planned to announce our first major initiative, a new arts education center in the downtown area. Lily's eyes narrowed with sudden understanding. Built on the land where Westview Community Center currently stands. Yes, Reynolds admitted without hesitation. The location is perfect, centrally located, accessible by public transportation, with enough space for a state-of-the-art facility. A facility that none of the current Westview users could afford to access, Lily pointed out. Reynolds waved a dismissive hand. That's where you're wrong. My vision is for a center that serves everyone, with programs for underprivileged youth, seniors, working adults, but with proper facilities, proper instruments, proper instructors. He fixed her with a pointed look. People like you. Lily blinked in surprise. Me? You could teach master classes while completing your studies. After graduation, a permanent position if you want it. Either way, you'd be our success story. The talented pianist who overcame financial hardship through determination and now helps others do the same. He spread his hands. It's a compelling narrative. The offer was dizzying. To return to school, to finish her degree, to have financial stability. These were dreams Lily had reluctantly set aside years ago. And yet, what about the people who use Westview now? She asked. Where will they go during construction? That could take years. Temporary facilities can be arranged. At the same affordable rates, that can be negotiated. And who gets to decide what underprivileged means? Who determines which children deserve assistance? Reynolds' expression tightened slightly. He clearly wasn't accustomed to having his offers questioned so thoroughly. Those are details that would be worked out by the foundation board, he said, his tone cooler. The point is, Ms. Chen, I'm offering you a chance to continue your education and have a direct impact on arts education in this community. Most people would jump at such an opportunity. Lily took a deep breath. Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate the offer, truly. But I can't be the face of something that begins by destroying a place that has helped so many people, including me. Reynolds studied her for a long moment, then surprised her by laughing softly. You know, when I invited you to serve at this party, it was because I was impressed by your memory and efficiency at the diner. I had no idea you'd end up being the most interesting person here. He walked to his desk and pressed an intercom button. Diane, please come to my study. While they waited, Reynolds regarded Lily with newfound respect. Not many people say no to me, Ms. Chen. I imagine not, Lily replied quietly. Diane entered the room moments later, clipboard still in hand. Yes, Mr. Reynolds? Two things, he said, not taking his eyes off Lily. First, Ms. Chen is no longer working as server staff tonight. She's now my guest. Please have Gregory adjust the staff accordingly. Diane's eyebrows rose slightly, but she made a note without comment. Second, Reynolds continued, contact my lawyer first thing Monday morning. I want to discuss restructuring the Westview Community Center acquisition. Now Diane looked genuinely surprised. Restructuring, sir? Yes, I'm thinking more of a renovation than a demolition. Preserving the existing programs while expanding the facilities. He glanced at Lily. With community input on the changes, of course. Lily couldn't hide her shock. You'd do that? Reynolds shrugged. As I said, I'm a businessman. I recognize when an approach needs adjustment. He turned back to Diane. That's all for now. When Diane had left, closing the door behind her, Reynolds continued. My offer of the scholarship stands regardless. No strings attached. Think of it as an apology for trying to embarrass you tonight. I don't understand, Lily said, genuinely confused by this turn of events. Why would you change your plans for the community center because of me? Reynolds was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. Do you know why I started collecting art, Miss Chen? The real reason? Lily shook her head. Because beautiful things should be seen and heard, not hidden away or lost to circumstance. He gestured toward the door, beyond which the sounds of the party continued. What you did out there tonight was create something beautiful that moved people. It reminded me why I started the foundation in the first place, not as a tax write-off or for positive press, but because talent deserves a chance to flourish. He walked to the window again, looking out at the night sky. My father was a factory worker. My mother cleaned houses. Neither of them lived to see what I've built. But they sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had. He turned back to face her. Sound familiar? Lily nodded slowly, seeing him in a new light. So, he said, straightening his jacket, shall we return to the party? I believe there are quite a few people eager to speak with you. As they walked back toward the ballroom, Lily tried to process everything that had just happened. The evening had taken so many unexpected turns that she felt slightly dizzy with it all. The ballroom was still filled with guests, though the formal entertainment had concluded. Madam Winters was surrounded by admirers near the bar. The string quartet had resumed playing background music. As Lily entered with Reynolds, heads turned and conversations paused. There she is, someone said. And suddenly Lily found herself the center of attention once more. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s approached first. Ms. Chen, I'm Dean Richardson from the Royal Conservatory. I was extremely impressed by your performance. Thank you, Lily managed, glancing uncertainly at Reynolds. The Dean and I were just discussing your future, Reynolds said smoothly. I mentioned you hadn't completed your degree due to financial constraints. A shameful waste of talent, the Dean declared. We would be very interested in having you audition for our program. With your permission, of course. Before Lily could respond, others joined them. The concert pianist she had noticed earlier, a woman who introduced herself as the director of a prestigious summer music festival, a philanthropist interested in supporting emerging artists. Trey appeared at her elbow with a glass of champagne. Thought you might need this, he whispered with a wink before slipping away. Lily accepted the glass gratefully, taking a small sip as she tried to keep track of the conversation swirling around her. People were offering cards, making suggestions, asking questions about her training and experience. It was overwhelming but exhilarating. Through it all, Reynolds stood nearby, occasionally introducing her to someone new but mostly allowing her to navigate on her own. She caught his eye once and he gave her a slight nod that somehow conveyed both approval and respect. As the evening began to wind down, Madam Winters approached. The famous soprano carried herself with the confident grace of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. My dear, she said, taking Lily's hands in her own, you play with such passion, such honesty. Her accent was slight but distinctive. Music is not just in your fingers but in your heart. Coming from you, that means everything, Lily replied, genuinely moved. I stood in line for 3 hours once to hear you sing Puccini. Madam Winters laughed delightedly. And now look at us, sharing champagne at the same party. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. I'm giving a master class at the university next month. I would be honored if you would play the accompaniment for my demonstration. Lily stared at her in disbelief. Me, but surely you have a regular accompanist. I do. But sometimes we must make room for new voices, new talents. The soprano squeezed her hands. Think about it. Call my assistant. She pressed a card into Lily's palm. Now I must go. Early flight tomorrow. But I expect to hear from you, yes? As Madam Winters swept away, Lily stood motionless, the card clutched in her hand like a talisman. If someone had told her this morning that by midnight she would be holding the private contact information of one of the world's greatest opera singers, she would have laughed in disbelief. The party continued to thin out as guests departed in 2s and 3s, many stopping to congratulate Lily or express their admiration for her playing. By 1 in the morning, only a handful remained, engaged in quiet conversation over nightcaps. Lily found herself once again drawn to the Steinway. With most of the guests gone, she approached it cautiously, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. One more, Reynolds said, appearing beside her. For those of us still here. The remaining guests murmured their agreement, gathering around the piano expectantly. This time, as Lily took her seat at the bench, there was no fear, no hesitation. She knew exactly what she wanted to play. Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece her grandmother had particularly loved. The gentle, impressionistic melody filled the now quiet ballroom, its dreamy quality perfectly suited to the late hour. Lily played with her eyes closed, letting the music speak of moonlight and reflection, of endings and new beginnings. When the final notes faded, there was no thunderous applause this time, just appreciative sighs and quiet thanks. It felt intimate, honest, like sharing a secret with friends rather than performing for an audience. As Lily stood, Reynolds approached with a small envelope. "Your payment for tonight," he said, offering it to her. "Although it seems inadequate now." Lily accepted the envelope with a small smile. "Thank you. For everything." "No," Reynolds said quietly. "Thank you for reminding me of something important." He glanced around his opulent ballroom. "Sometimes we build things and forget why we started building in the first place." As Lily gathered her things to leave, Trey appeared one last time. "Need a ride home? A bunch of us are sharing a car service." "That would be great," Lily said, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. As they walked toward the exit, Trey nudged her shoulder gently. "So, piano prodigy, huh? Any other secrets I should know about?" Lily laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "No more secrets," she said. "From now on, I play in the open." 1 year later, the renovated Westview Community Center bustled with activity as children raced through its newly expanded hallways. Where once there had been peeling paint and worn carpeting, now gleaming wooden floors and bright, welcoming colors created an atmosphere of possibility and creativity. Lily stood in the doorway of the main music room, watching a group of elementary school children tentatively press piano keys under the patient guidance of a young instructor. The room contained not 1 but 5 pianos now, including the baby grand that had been there before. New acoustic panels lined the walls and large windows let in streams of natural light. "Ms. Chen," a small girl with braids spotted her and waved excitedly. "Are you teaching us today?" "Not today, Zoe," Lily replied with a smile. "I'm just checking in, but I'll see you Thursday for your regular lesson, okay?" The child nodded happily before returning her attention to the keyboard in front of her. Lily continued down the hallway, greeting staff members and students as she went. As the newly appointed artistic director of the Westview Music Program, she made these rounds several times a week between her own classes and performances. The past year had been a whirlwind of change. True to his word, Reynolds had restructured his plans for the community center. Instead of demolishing the building, he had funded an extensive renovation, working with community leaders to ensure that existing programs continued even during construction. Temporary spaces had been secured in nearby buildings, and scholarship funds established to make sure no one was left without access to the services they needed. Lily had been involved every step of the way, initially as a consultant and later as a staff member. Her insight into what made Westview special, its accessibility, its community focus, its nurturing environment, had helped shape the vision for its future. At the same time, she had returned to school, this time at the prestigious Royal Conservatory on a full scholarship. The academic dean had been true to his word as well, arranging an audition that had resulted in not just admission, but acclaim from the faculty. Balancing her studies with her growing responsibilities at Westview wasn't easy, but Lily had never been happier. "There you are," called a friendly voice. Lily turned to see Trey approaching, a camera bag slung over his shoulder. After that fateful night at Reynolds' mansion, they had kept in touch, and when the position for a media coordinator at Westview had opened up, Lily had immediately thought of him. "Just finished documenting the senior choir rehearsal," he said, falling into step beside her. "Those folks can really sing when they put their minds to it." "They've been practicing for the anniversary concert," Lily replied. "Everyone wants to make it special." The concert he referred to was just 2 weeks away, a celebration of the community center's reopening and the launch of its expanded arts programs. It would feature performances by students of all ages, from children just beginning to learn instruments to seniors who had discovered or rediscovered their love of music late in life. "Speaking of the concert," Trey said, "you'll never guess who just confirmed they're attending." "Who?" "Madam Winters." He grinned at Lily's surprised expression. "Apparently she was so impressed with your accompaniment at her master class that she wants to see what you've been building here." Lily felt a flutter of excitement. Her performance with the famous soprano 6 months ago had been a highlight of her return to music. The masterclass had led to other opportunities: small recitals, accompaniment work, even a featured performance with the city orchestra. "We should prepare something special for her," Lily mused as they reached her office. A small but bright room with a desk, a digital piano for practice, and walls covered with children's artwork and thank you notes. "Already ahead of you," Trey said, pulling out his tablet. "I've been working on the program. Take a look." As they discussed the upcoming event, Lily's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Reynolds' assistant, confirming his attendance at a board meeting later that afternoon. As the primary donor and founder of the foundation that now supported Westview's operations, Reynolds remained involved in major decisions, though he had appointed a diverse board of community members to guide most day-to-day matters. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. Not quite friendship, but a mutual respect built on shared goals and complementary strengths. Reynolds provided the business acumen and connections that kept the foundation financially sound, while Lily ensured that its programs remained true to the community's needs. "You know," Trey said, interrupting her thoughts, "sometimes I still think about that night at the mansion. The look on Reynolds' face when you started playing," he chuckled. "Worth every blister I got from carrying those heavy trays." Lily smiled at the memory. "It's strange how life works. If he hadn't tried to embarrass me, none of this might have happened." "True. But it took courage for you to play like that when put on the spot. Most people would have frozen." Lily shrugged. "I just did what I've always done. Let the music speak for me." After finishing her work at the center, Lily headed across town to the Reynolds Foundation headquarters for the board meeting. The foundation offices occupied the top floor of one of Reynolds' commercial buildings, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the city. As she entered the conference room, several board members greeted her warmly. They were an eclectic group: business leaders, educators, artists, and community organizers, all brought together by their commitment to making arts education accessible to everyone. Reynolds arrived last, as was his habit. Though he had changed in many ways over the past year, punctuality remained a challenge. He nodded to Lily as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Let's get started," he said without preamble. First agenda item: the Westview Anniversary Concert. The meeting proceeded efficiently, with updates on funding, program enrollment, and upcoming initiatives. When they reached the discussion of expanding the foundation's model to other neighborhoods, Reynolds turned to Lily. "Ms. Chen, you've been researching potential locations. What have you found?" Lily presented her findings, highlighting areas of the city where arts programs were lacking and community centers were struggling. "Based on our experience with Westview, I believe we could make the greatest impact by partnering with these existing organizations rather than building new facilities from scratch. Renovation instead of demolition," Reynolds said with a slight smile. "A lesson well learned." After the meeting, Reynolds asked Lily to stay behind. When the others had filed out, he walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline as he often did when deep in thought. "I visited the center yesterday," he said. "Watched a group of kids from the shelter learning to play violin. Their instructor said most of them had never held an instrument before this month." "Mr. Lee's class," Lily nodded. "He's doing amazing work with them." "One little boy," Reynolds continued, "couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. When he finally got the hang of a simple melody, the look on his face." He turned to Lily. "That's why we do this, isn't it? For moments like that." "It is," Lily agreed softly. Reynolds nodded, more to himself than to her. "I've been thinking about my parents lately, wondering what they would make of all this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the foundation, the renovated center, perhaps his life's work as a whole. "My father always said I was too focused on the future to appreciate the present. And now?" Lily asked. "Now I find myself paying more attention to the music." He smiled slightly. "Speaking of which, I have a proposition for you." Lily raised an eyebrow, remembering the last time he had used those words. "Another one?" "The foundation is expanding, as you know. We need someone to oversee all of our arts education programs. Not just at Westview, but at the new partner locations as well. Someone who understands both the artistic and community aspects of what we're trying to achieve." "You want me to take on more responsibility?" Lily asked, surprised. "I'm still finishing my degree, and I already have my hands full at Westview. We would adjust your schedule, provide additional staff support. You could complete your studies while building something that could impact thousands of children. He studied her face. Think about it. No need to decide today. That evening, Lily returned to her apartment, a new one in a better neighborhood, though she had insisted on keeping it modest. Her old upright piano still occupied the living room wall, though it now shared space with the many books, scores, and mementos she had accumulated in the past year. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the piano, playing softly as she considered Reynolds's offer. The opportunity was tempting, a chance to expand the work she had begun at Westview, to reach more communities, more children, more people who might otherwise never experience the transformative power of music. But it would also mean less time for her own practice, her own performances. The path back to her abandoned dreams was clear now. She could finish her degree, pursue a career as a concert pianist, perhaps even teach at the conservatory level. Was she willing to set that aside for administrative work, even work she believed in deeply? As she played, her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "Music isn't just about playing, child. It's about listening. To yourself, to others, to the world around you." The next morning, Lily arrived at Westview earlier than usual. She made her way to the main performance space, where the largest of the new pianos, a beautiful Steinway grand that Reynolds had donated from his personal collection, gleamed under carefully positioned lights. The room was empty at this hour. Lily sat at the bench and began to play, not the classical repertoire she had been perfecting for her degree, but a simple folk melody her grandmother had taught her when she was very young. The notes echoed in the empty space, pure and clear. She didn't hear the door open, didn't notice she had an audience until the applause startled her. A group of children from the early morning program stood watching her, eyes wide with appreciation. "That was pretty," said a small boy at the front of the group, one of the children from the shelter, she realized. "Can you teach me to play like that?" Lily looked at his hopeful face, then at the others behind him, children who, like her younger self, might never have encountered music if not for places like Westview. In that moment, her decision became clear. "Yes," she said, smiling as she moved over on the bench and patted the space beside her. "I can teach you. Come sit with me." As the child settled nervously next to her, his small fingers hovering uncertainly over the keys, Lily gently placed her hand over his, guiding him to the first notes of the melody. "Music is a gift," she told him, echoing her grandmother's words. "Once you receive it, your job is to pass it on." And as the child's face lit up with the miracle of creating music for the first time, Lily knew she had found her true calling, not just as a pianist, but as a bridge between worlds, a keeper of dreams, a passer of gifts. The story that had begun with a millionaire's attempt to embarrass a waitress had transformed them both, rippling outward to touch countless other lives. What had started as a moment of potential humiliation had become a legacy of opportunity, proof that sometimes the most beautiful music arises from the most unexpected circumstances.